Hello everyone, Pineaaronapple here with our next installment in the MCU, Captain America, the First Avenger. When it comes to the MCU, I have a couple of blind spots. I don't remember what happens in the Dark World, I haven't seen Eternals, but somehow I watched Madam Web, which I suppose I'll have to review at some point. And out of the three current Captain America movies, I really only remember Civil War, because it's basically Avengers 2.5 plus Spider-Man. So both of the other Captain America movies are going to be a bit of a surprise, as all I know about this one is Skinny Boy, a Brit the internet is thirsty for, who got featured in What If, Clara Oswald is there, and Hugo Weaving in his most dramatic role since playing the crossdresser in The Dressmaker. That's kind of a weird detail for me to bring up because I think that movie came out after this one, and I only read the book, so I don't even know if he cross-dresses in the movie. This film was directed by Joe Johnston, who also directed Jumanji and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and was written by duo Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who will make a few more MCU appearances down the road, so I have high hopes for how this will turn out. Please no Dutch angles, please no Dutch angles. We start the film in the Arctic with an impressive visual of the polar storms against the sun, as they discuss having found a UFO. And I don't mean aliens, I mean literally unidentified flying object. They laser their way in and manage to find the iconic shield encased in ice, notifying their higher-ups with an accurate, very cheesy and honestly a little bit cool line. And no, that wasn't a pun.
Page, give me a line to the Colonel.
3 a.m., sir.
I don't care what time it is. This one's waited long enough.
So, with that little modern-day tack, we get thrown back to Norway 1942, where, in a few pretty locales and sets, prominent actor David Bradley as the church keeper and a young man defend the church from an invading force, in a pretty tense but short scene, against Hydra, an organisation that basically amounts to super-Nazis in my understanding. And they bulldoze their way in, their leader arriving with an intimidating and imposing air and presence, Johan Schmidt, played by Australia's own Hugo Weaving. He gets some pretty good dialogue with the church keeper, unveiling a little blue cube, the Tesseract, and as if it couldn't be more referential, he notes that it was once said to be from Odin's treasure room. But it's a fake, only finding the real one after some threatening of loved ones, unveiling a pretty cool hidden compartment. And in exit, Johan kills the church keeper and opens fire on the village anyway, just so we know on what point of the scale of villainy this asshole resides, and getting some good groundwork for the future reveal of his appearance. We jump to America, where a skinny Steve Rogers, played by Chris Evans, is deciding to enlist in the army. And while I feel sometimes on rare occasions this effect gives Steve an almost bobble-headed appearance, it is pretty impressive when it works. We learn he's got a plethora of medical issues, and his asthma alone deems him unfit for service. We had to see him in front of a group of people watching some propaganda before a movie, getting himself in trouble against a lowlife who just wants the movie to start. And yeah, this guy's just a dick, but let's not pretend we wouldn't be just as annoyed as we're trying to watch a new movie, and these army guys just keep going on about how great war is. The fight they have doesn't last very long as his friend Bucky comes along to help. But the scene is a defining moment for the character, setting up a catchphrase and displaying his determination and spirit. Bucky is played by Sebastian Stan, and the two work off each other pretty well. And in some dialogue I really like, and how natural it makes clear exposition sound as it's conveyed, we learn this isn't the first time Steve's attempted to get into the army, like Bucky, who's shipping out the next day. They attend the pretty visually stunning, even if a little CGI heavy, Stark Expo, meeting some lovely lasses played by
Clara?
Jesus, how many other surprised Doctor Who actors I didn't remember being here are we going to get in this thing? The other is played by Sophie Colquhoun, who sucks. Not as an actress, as she doesn't really get anything to do, but her character is more interested in the sights than even looking at Steve. And it's kinda strange their names are Connie and Bonnie. What happened to their first sister, Aoni? Tony's father, Howard Stark, appears on stage to the crowd our hero is in, not looking at all like he did in Iron Man 2. Here, snoggy as a Tana wannabe and being played by Mamma Mia love interest Dominic Cooper. Stark's presentation is serviceable, but Steve finds a really topical and well thought out symbolism before ditching the dates and once again trying his luck in the nearby recruitment centre. Their conversation, where Bucky rightfully points out Steve's insecurities, and their goodbye is overheard by Abraham Erskine, played by Stanley Tucci, who recruits him after learning of his eagerness and heart, although it does seem to be a little more than that. Meanwhile, with the Nazis, Johann is helped by scientist Arnim Zola, played by Toby Jones, a pretty well-known actor and making it 3 Doctor Who actors now. They attempt to use the Tesseract in experiments, creating a new and evidently very powerful source of energy. Another 2 characters are introduced as Steve's superiors while training. The badass no-shit taking Agent Peggy Carter, played by Hayley Atwell, who at the point of recording will outlive Chris Evans in their roles in the MCU, and Tommy Lee Jones as Colonel Phillips. The training montage is a little generic, but is finished with a pretty badass display of brains over brawn. Other nice details adding to this, such as Steve being the only recruit to visibly be within a meter of a book. Erskine seems to have selected Steve for something, and we get one of the more iconic scenes of both the character and the film, as the Colonel tosses a grenade into the group and Steve jumps on it to shield the others. Erskine and Steve have a nice talk that also exposits some more information on Johann for us, him having taken one of Erskine's formulas to make him stronger to his detriment. But Erskine is sure that it can make Steve a hero, and it's in this scene I noticed the dialogue has been noticeably and consistently good so far, having the MCU classic jokey joke tone toned down a lot here. We see Johann is still keeping tabs on Erskine, and we get a clever hint to Johann's true image. Steve and Peggy have a nice little scene where the perspective is a little disjointed between shots, and with a secret code, enter Erskine's hidden lab, with the help of Stark, where Steve can start the serum process. The process is short and scored well, but not very interesting to me until Steve's proclamation, forcing the scientists to finish the painful process, and the end result being honestly pretty impressive. Chris Evans obviously putting a lot of effort into his body. This achievement is slightly ruined as a State Department member steals the last vial of the serum on the rack, blows the viewing box up, and kills Erskine, with Peggy just behind, landing a shot on the agent, and the situation evolving into a street fight where Peggy gets another excellent shot, but is saved by Steve before she's killed. And Steve uses his new abilities and knowledge of the surroundings to clumsily but impressively catch up to the stolen car. It's becoming a hostage situation as a child is stolen. And after a funny little moment between Steve and the child, Steve manages to wrench the agent out of his super duper Nazi submarine and break the serum before the agent breaks a capsule, killing himself as he states Hydra's pretty badass moniker. Hey, just because they're Nazis doesn't mean they can't be stylish. Hitler is apparently starting to be disappointed by Johann, but he managed to surprise and utterly destroy his assessors, making Zola a hair's breadth away from shitting himself as Hydra officially breaks itself off from the Nazi party.
Don't be stupid, be a smarty. Come and join the Nazi party.
The Americans realize that it will be almost impossible to replicate the Super Soldier program, and Howard is having a tough time with the German sub. So he, along with Peggy, are sent to a research base in England, while Steve is uncomfortably propagandized many times over in a flat musical number with a strange Hitler impressionist, and in a cute meta moment, he stars in propaganda films and comics reminiscent of his own. Just as he performs for the real soldiers, he meets Peggy again, and it's revealed this group is Barnes's. The Colonel not so sure, but assuming he's dead. Steve refuses to back down and steals transport for himself into battle. Peggy and Howard coming in with an assist, flying him in with some poor flirting. Him jumping as soon as the shooting starts to give them time to turn the bird around and get out of there. We get another scene with Zola and Johann to build tension and display their pretty stylized prisons, with a surprise appearance from Neil McDonough as Tim Dum Dum Duggan. Meanwhile, Steve hitches a ride on Hydra transport, kicking some ass with comedic timing and managing to sneak into the imposing building, coming upon some of the Tesseract weapons, taking a sample for himself before freeing the prisoners with a title drop, and another surprise cameo in the form of Kenneth Choi, playing Jim Morita, another member of the comic group The Howling Commandos. And a few more. The prisoners riot, taking many Hydra guards with them, and taking their super weapons for themselves in some pretty good action. Johann sees Steve coming and extracts the Tesseract, while Zola takes his research, and Steve finds Bucky strapped to a table, and sees a map of strategic points marked, while the prisoners kick Hydra ass, and the base goes into self-destruct. Johann eventually confronts Steve, getting a punch in the face for his trouble, but gets to show off his super strength. In a pretty creepy effect, the punch knocks Johann's mask awry, and as the two are separated, he takes the mask fully off, revealing the impressive visage of the Red Skull. Steve gets the last word in as the Nazis run, Red Skull taking a rocket plane hybrid, and Zola riding out in his car. Steve and Bucky's escape is a very average scene, and we cut to the Colonel assuming once again that Steve this time is KIA. And attempts to reprimand Carter, but of course, Bucky and Steve arrive with the other prisoners triumphant, and for a little pinch of flirting with Peggy. We get a pretty funny Stan Lee cameo, and Steve informs Peggy of the points he saw on Zola's map, as he gives the Colonel what info he can, and he wants to take the men from the prison, the Howling Commandos, with him to take on the other Hydra bases. Steve and Bucky get some more good dialogue as Peggy enters to an awooga in all the men's internal monologues, and some more flirting with Steve, promising an after-the-war dance, narratively signalling that Steve definitely won't make it out unscathed. Howard is unconvinced of the Tesseract's power until it blows up in his face while Steve is strangely flirted with by a rando, in view of Peggy. And strangely, if not truthfully, he agrees with Stark when they meet that sure, men have no idea what goes on in a woman's head. Howard and Steve discuss the classic vibranium shield that he grows attached to, a material quite rare, and to prove its capabilities, Peggy just pulls a pistol on him. Usually there I would comedically simplify it to she pulls a Glock on him, due to the shape of the gun. But the last time I said that, and the pistol wasn't a Glock, I got angry comments, so let's just move on. Steve gets a new uniform along with the shield, and we get a pretty good montage, at least better than the last, as he and the Howling Commandos raid Hydra bases, much to the anger of the Red Skull. And while the CG can be a bit dodgy here, the fights otherwise look great and appropriately staged. Nothing too ridiculous taking Steve's power into account. Red Skull is pissed with Zola, going so far as killing the last of his failed men, as the Commandos intercept Zola's train along the snowy mountains. And while them landing on the train looks a little dodgy, the traversal of it and the battle inside are pretty well done. But considering the later movies, it does feel weird to see Cap using a gun so casually. Bucky becomes a damsel in distress, and in a pretty heart-wrenching scene, falls from the train after attempting to use Cap's shield, but they do manage to catch Zola in the end. We learn that Zola is a vegetarian, for what good that gives us, and the Colonel bluffs Hydra by sending information that Zola is a turncoat, effectively forcing him to do so for his own safety. Hydra rallies and we get another scene between Cap and Peggy as he laments his inability to get wasted, and vows to stop Hydra while she attempts to console him. According to Zola and the Colonel, they have 24 hours to kick Red Skull's shit in, going with the direct approach and storming his Hydra base. They start with an average motorcycle chase and a Wilhelm, getting outside the base with some pretty good close quarters combat, and what I can only call shield play. But Steve is captured and brought before Red Skull. We get some average dialogue between the two, although the ideas between and behind the characters are interesting, even with a nice callback. Before he can be killed, the Commandos storm Red Skull's office, leaving the Red Man running, with Cap not too far behind, and these close quarter combat scenes are much better than what we got in Thor. Both the groundedness of these battles also helps, making them more palatable and relatable to a general action-oriented audience. But there also seems to be a little bit of an uptick in both the directing and editing departments. The Colonel gets a good moment and Steve gets a save from Peggy, where they get another "are they gonna kiss yet" scene, and you know, for how defining this relationship seems to be for Cap going forward, and again, I'm only talking about my recollection of the MCU going forward, talking about the feeling of the characters and movies rather than the specific filmmaking, these two work together in a far more sitcom-y will they won't they way, not needing the filmmakers to wave a flag saying, "Romance budding here!" Red Skull takes the Tesseract and starts his superplane on a course for New York, Cap being the only one to make it there, as the Hydra forces are fought by the army, and the CGI once again suffers a little bit, specifically with the background, but Peggy and the Colonel get another cool assist before it resolves to Steve and Red Skull. But we do finally get that kiss between the two. But still, as I said, this relationship needs a little more work, since it essentially takes the same route as the last film, being built up, ending in a kiss, and then being left for a future movie to resolve whatever wall is being built up between them. But honestly, I feel like I know Peggy a little better than I know Jane. Even apparently getting her own show, which I'll have to take a look at. Red Skull comically has a few labelled bombs for a few major American cities, and Steve has to fight his way to the Red Skull, dropping a few of the bombs before they can head on their way. And Steve has to fight to both make sure the bomb doesn't get to its target, and make his way back to the plane. The visuals look a lot better here as he flies around and crashes back into the plane, ready to face Red Skull, quickly becoming a fist fight, which while average in idea, is executed and choreographed well enough. But with a hit of the control sends them barreling downwards temporarily, but as Cap damages the Tesseract, its power is unleashed, melting Red Skull and pulling him through a portal into a yet undefined area of space, leaving it to melt through the plane's bottom, and Cap forced to continue the ship's downward trajectory into the sea, unable to land it. He calls Peggy, and the scene between the two could be better, but is sufficiently melancholy, as they reschedule their dance for next week, hopeful he'll make it, but also clearly resigned, as even the Colonel looks on in grief. A moment which, on a quick recollection, and yes, once again comparing back to Thor, is a type of scene that I don't really think Jane and Thor got. The Commandos in the future toast the captain, and Howard sends a drone to retrieve the Tesseract, but keeps a lookout for the plane. The Colonel gives Peggy Steve's file, and as a nice little hopeful shot, we see some free American kids playing Captain America. So with the main story over, Cap wakes up in New York in a cleverly crafted, falsely aged room, leading to him busting out of the false facility and straight into the streets of Times Square to be met by Nick Fury, who apologizes for the fake room and breaks the news to him that he was frozen and is woken up in modern day, paying off the beginning of the movie, and finishing off with a very inappropriate joke.
You gonna be okay?
Yeah, I just... we had a date.
That ends the film with a clever use of edited propaganda as imagery, and in the post-credits, at least in my copy, is a poorly edited trailer for the Avengers, literally starting with the actual scene that introduces Cap in that film. So that was Captain America the First Avenger, and it was actually much greater than I remember. There was a lot of stuff in here that either bored me or felt a little overstuffed, but it's all used for specific reasons, such as Cap's propaganda parade montage lasting so long to give a great view of what he was becoming, and displaying his feelings about it without general exposition. As said before, Peggy and Cap get some good scenes together, clear chemistry, but is a little more sitcomified than the last film, even if they share similar through lines. And while Red Skull certainly wasn't as good as Loki or Abomination and Ross, he fit perfectly within the well-defined and stylized settings, and clearly pairs well with Cap. So looking back at the other ratings, I think I'll have to match it to Iron Man 1, just above Thor with an 8 out of 10. There was just a lot more here that felt new or better written than in Thor, even if I might have liked Thor and its side characters as characters a lot more. But I see a lot of pure quality here, and while the CGI is a little worse, I suppose that just attests to the scale this film attempts to go for. Thank you everybody for watching my latest MCU review, Captain America the First Avenger. Only one more movie until we're finished with Phase 1. Please like the video if you liked it, comment down below if you wish. Consider subscribing to the channel, and if you do, ring that notification bell so you're told every single time that I make an upload. Once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next review. Bye!
Toast. A little piece of toast. Because there's so much to choose from. There's brown bread, white bread, all sorts of wholemeal bread. It comes in funny packages with writing on the side.